The question is that the bill be now read a second time. I call the honourable member for Banks.
Thank you very much, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm very thrilled to speak on this very good piece of legislation. And I might start out by responding to some of the remarks of the member for Charlton. He's always a colourful contributor in this place, Mr Deputy Speaker. But the problem with the previous government's approach in this area, as in so many others, was to announce a whole lot of projects, Deputy Speaker, and do absolutely nothing about funding them. And we've seen this, of course, right across the board, but nowhere more so than in infrastructure. And it is really a list of infamy of projects, Deputy Speaker. But Western Australia, the Great Northern Highway, unfunded under Labor. The North West Coastal Highway, unfunded. South Australia, the AP Widelands Road Network, unfunded. Queensland, the Cape York Regional Package. New South Wales, number of projects, Bolivia Hill, Mount Ousley, the Turl Street Bridge duplication, and close to the member for Charlton, the Scone Level Crossing, unfunded projects, Deputy Speaker. And so one of the first things that the government had to do in this infrastructure space was actually fund these projects, because it's all well and good to put out a press release, to sort of stand at the relevant intersection, Deputy Speaker, and shake hands with someone and say this is going to happen. But unless you actually fund the project, it can't happen. Of course, the alternative to funding it is just to borrow more money and increase the debt level of this nation, which, of course, is something that we would not countenance. So, very clear contrast. But the specific bill which we're discussing today, Deputy Speaker, is a very good piece of legislation, because what it does in a very practical way is encourage states to recycle their assets and to invest in new productive infrastructure. And of course, as you know, Deputy Speaker, the fund has some $5.9 billion in it, a very substantial amount indeed. And that fund provides a 15% additional amount of funding for the states when they seek to invest in a infrastructure project after recycling an asset. And so 15% and about $6 billion. So that means, Deputy Speaker, that if this fund is fully utilised, there will be $40 billion of additional infrastructure investment. And the reason this is particularly important is that, as you know, Deputy Speaker, many projects these are big projects, these are expensive projects, and it is not always easy to find the funds to make them happen. So a 15% incentive will be very effective, Deputy Speaker, in pushing across that line of viability projects that might otherwise not have happened, because $6 billion is a very substantial amount. And so rather than creating a whole new bureaucracy, rather than setting up a new department or setting up lengthy negotiations with the states, this provides a very simple signal to the states, which is that if you are willing to invest in important capital expenditure, we will stand there right beside you and provide a 15% incentive. And that is going to be critical, Deputy Speaker, because, as I say, many projects are just on one side of that line or the other. 15% will tip many of them over. And, of course, infrastructure generally, Deputy Speaker, is so important economically because it is the economic gift that keeps on giving. Because once you put in place a critical piece of infrastructure, whether it's a road or a port or any other similar facility, you make that difficult decision to invest what are often many billions of dollars, but that road is then there for the long run. And that road delivers for you on day one, and it delivers for you a year down the track, a decade down the track, and in fact many decades down the track. And we can think of some of the iconic infrastructure in our nation's history, Deputy Speaker, as we reflect on the importance of this bill, but think about the Sydney Harbour Bridge, Deputy Speaker. What an extraordinary piece of infrastructure that is. Incalculable economic benefits to the people of Sydney and the nation more generally in the 80+ years since its construction. Of course, the Snowy River scheme, another well-known example, and closer to the present day, the M4 highway in Sydney, imperfect though it is, and we're going to fix that with the WestConnex. That important though it is, the M4 has undoubtedly had an enormous impact in opening up Western Sydney to economic growth, and we have seen many business precincts pop up along the M4, and that wouldn't have happened if the road wasn't there. And of course, with those business precincts, with the warehouses, with the factories, come the jobs. And ultimately, why do we care about economic growth? We care about economic growth because economic growth means jobs, and infrastructure means economic growth, and that's why it is so important. So, no question that infrastructure is important. I suspect even those opposite would acknowledge that basic point, but those opposite have shown an inability to take the really tough decisions in this space, Deputy Speaker. And there is no harder or more important decision in infrastructure than the decision to build an airport in Western Sydney. Western Sydney has been crying out for an airport for decades, Deputy Speaker, and of course the original identification of the Badgerys Creek site was back in 1969. Now, I was born in 1974, Deputy Speaker. So for my entire life, there has been a proposal to build an airport in Badgerys Creek. And of course, we all know there are complexities associated with building a new airport. And as a consequence of those complexities, the project didn't get approved and didn't go forward. And it took the Prime Minister and his vision of infrastructure for the nation and for Western Sydney to bite the bullet and make that hard decision. And frankly, Deputy Speaker, I think the vast majority of people in Sydney know we had to do it. They know it was the right decision, and there is a strong level of community support, and so there should be, because Badgerys Creek is going to be a huge economic boon for Western Sydney. So 4,000 jobs in construction. Now, that's great, but of course, construction only goes for so long. But what's arguably more important, Deputy Speaker, is the ongoing economic benefit, the ongoing infrastructure improvements, the productivity improvements, the fact that you'll be able to get freight into Western Sydney more quickly, lower cost. What does that mean? More freight comes in, more economic activity in Western Sydney, more material moving through those warehouses, and when more material moves through those warehouses because it can move around so efficiently, what happens? More jobs. More jobs. And that's why it matters. $60 billion in GDP by 2060 is the best forecast, and that's an important figure. But of course, Deputy Speaker, these figures sometimes can be a bit abstract, but what does it really mean? It means a huge number of new jobs for Western Sydney. And it also means that Kingsford Smith Airport, which has been a loyal servant of the nation for many decades, that there is a reality about what it can and cannot do. It can only grow so far, Deputy Speaker, and the approval of the second airport means that we all recognise that Kingsford Smith has a logical capacity. That capacity will be reached fairly soon, and Badgerys Creek will help to fill the void. Of course, Badgerys Creek is accompanied by the Western Sydney Roads package, and this is a critical development, Deputy Speaker. Bringelly Road, Northern Road, Elizabeth Drive, these are all roads that frankly haven't kept pace with the growth of Western Sydney. And my colleagues, the member for Macarthur and the member for Lindsay, whose electorates are so directly involved in this, have been very articulate advocates of the need for the upgrade of that infrastructure, and the $3 billion project will be great for the area. Great to see also the cooperation with the state government. Of course, the Commonwealth is providing some 80% of the funding for that Western Sydney road project, and the state 20% as well. So a good common sense example, Deputy Speaker, of governments rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. And frankly, I think that's what the people of Western Sydney and Australia generally want to see. Closer to my electorate, Deputy Speaker, the government has made a very important infrastructure commitment in stage 2 of the West Connects. And what this means, most critically for my electorate, is the duplication of the M5 East. Now, the M5 East, Deputy Speaker, can be an incredible frustration to drive on. It's only 2 lanes, Deputy Speaker. This will make it 4. And this is the main arterial road from the southwestern part of Sydney into the city. And from the Beverly Hills interchange, which is in my electorate, the duplication going towards the city, best estimate from the department is that will save 25 minutes for people travelling to the city in peak hour. 25 minutes, Deputy Speaker, that is an enormous benefit from a productivity perspective and, of course, from a family life perspective, because it means people get home quicker at the end of the day, and that can only be a good thing. So great cooperation with the state government, a $1.5 billion a direct injection from the Commonwealth, and of course a concessional loan of $2 billion, which has really helped to. It's often about tipping them over the edge and making them happen, and that $2 billion concessional loan has got West Connects and the M5 duplication over the line. And in fact, so much so that the development will start next year and the project will be completed within 5 years. And these are lengthy projects, and that is a very good time frame. So, Deputy Speaker, West Connect's a tremendous benefit, and it's consistent with the government's overall approach to making the economy get moving again. And we see a very similar situation in environmental approvals, where the Minister for Environment has stepped forward and provided approvals for some $400 billion of projects, $400 billion of projects that were frankly sitting idle under the previous government, a sort of a maze of indecision, red tape and bureaucratic malaise, Deputy Speaker. The Minister for the Environment last year, prior to Christmas, one of the first things he did on taking office, stepped in and said, these are critical projects, these are massive job-creating projects, and we are going to enable them to happen. And at the end of the day, Deputy Speaker, that is the critical role of government, is enabling things to occur in the economy. The government, of course, has great limitations in what it can do in a direct intervention in the economy, and so much of that is best left to the private sector. But what we can do, what we are doing through this infrastructure package, is enabling private sector investment. We're not used to that in my state of New South Wales, because in 16 years we had a state Labor government, Deputy Speaker. 16 years, and we had more announcements about infrastructure than the births, deaths and marriages page. So many announcements. There were all sorts of things that were going to happen, Deputy Speaker. And we did, as a populace, I have to say, we did become a little cynical, the people of New South Wales. The Parramatta to Epping rail link was announced with much fanfare on, you literally lost count the number of times, Deputy Speaker. And again, so many hard hats, so many fluoro vests, so many announcements, so little actually happening. And at the end of the day, people will judge governments on their results, as they should, and the infrastructure results in New South Wales in that sorry period between 1995 and 2011 were just appalling. And that's why it is so great to see the emphasis on infrastructure from the New South Wales government working hand in hand with the Commonwealth in this asset recycling area. So one of the fundamental commitments of the government prior to the election, Deputy Speaker, was to build the roads of the 21st century. We know that we need that. We know that for too long, difficult infrastructure projects have been put in the too hard basket. And this government, through a combination of direct investment, incentives for states to invest, getting rid of arbitrary and excessively regulated approval processes, so as to allow the private sector to step up and invest, through a combination of all of those initiatives, Deputy Speaker, is going to build the roads of the 21st century. The West Connects is going to be a critical one for my electorate, and this bill will assist in that tremendous initiative of the government. Thank you.